What's up, guys and gals, for still the latest piece of One Piece, chapter 1168, entitled The Snows of Elbaf. I'll be straight up with you, this review is quite late because I thought it was already on YouTube. I'll be straight up with you and honest about that. I thought I had reviewed it. I was convinced that I had already put this review out when it dropped, and it wasn't until we did a podcast, so plug, the Baroque's Work podcast by Nia D. Hemmings. It was a really great time. The link will be in the description down below. We did a big, long, 4-hour, 5-hour podcast on One Piece and stuff and the latest chapters. And then I went back and, while checking the different YouTube links, realized my review is nowhere to be seen. So, with that being said, obviously I forgot to do it. So now we are here to cover the chapter. Thankfully, it's a break week, so I'm not exactly behind by a chapter. It's still the latest chapter, but it is what it is. Anyways, let's just get underway with this one, because while there's a few things to talk about, this is just Harald going from bad to worse. And funnily enough, on that same podcast, I posed a couple questions myself, and one of them was, is Harald more naive than Odin was in Wano? Because very similar characters, two leaders of two countries who are taken in, by, evil, in Odin's case, it's believing Kaido at his word and stuff like that, and then, between a rock and a hard place. And Harald, just, no matter how much evidence he sees, continues to say, nope, we need the world government, we need to work with them, blah, blah, blah. Now, most people have come to the conclusion that Harald is a very naive, and I want it now, and I've said this for multiple chapters reviews, he wants to solve racism. For 900 years of racism and bigotry and terrorizing, he wants to solve all that in one day. You know what I mean? He is not a patient man and stuff, and that does not a good ruler make. And as a result, he's also failing as a father and stuff like that. So right here at the beginning of the chapter with just getting that little bit after years and stuff like that, getting that little bit up on the, people are like, hey, is there any more of that Elbaf seafood? We're really looking forward to it and stuff, because Harald has sold himself basically to the world government. They're working, and everything in his mind is like, yes, this is progress. And maybe we should build a cruise ship so that we can travel freely to our fellow nations and stuff. So the rest of the world, we're a very curious minority. There are so many different people in so many different countries, and we should do this and stuff. And this is all well and good. Once again, it's good intentions. Harald is doing this from a position of good intentions. But, quote Sam Neill from Jurassic Park 3, some of the worst things imaginable were done with the best intentions. And here we go. What transpires and what's going to go down? Rox already warned him years ago. Years ago. Everyone's been warning him about this stuff, and he doesn't exactly come home and talk to Ida or the elders or his sons or whatever. Or Saul, he doesn't go to these people and go, yeah, so world government did some really shady, fucked up shit. Mary Jo is just covered in slaves. Celestial dragons are like the epitome of the worst people. He doesn't come home and say that. He comes home and says, making more progress to make Elbaf great. He does not give the details, so no one around him can give him proper advice, because none of the people he surrounded himself with, he hasn't even surrounded himself with yes men. He's surrounded himself with people he keeps in the dark. Nobody is aware of all the shit that Harald has seen. He's aware, and he's got blinders on. He's just tunnel visioning the entire thing. It's crazy. And we see this here, with Harald. He talks to Saul about this, saying, let's keep the school up and stuff like that. I don't want to think of our nation as military might and stuff like that. Ida taught me everything I know, and the fact that I met her, is my thing. And we see that Ida has a gravestone and stuff, and we get a flashback to Harald was with her when she died. So at least Harald wasn't at sea when, doing bullshit for the world government. And don't tell me he only struck down male pirate crews for the world government for the last, You're telling me that a God's Knight was literally just a privateer. Nah, they got the Marines for that. Okay, they got the Marines for that. Let's be real. Don't tell me Harald didn't have to do some Metal Gear James Bond shady shit. You know what I mean? As a holy knight. So anyway, as a God's Knight. Now, here we do see the flashback. Now, this this isn't the part. This sort of got me. I will say this part did get me a little bit because Loki is not, of course, is behind bars currently for destroying the alcohol village. Totally justified, by the way. Completely justified that he did this. And he is obviously not going to tell anybody why, because Harald was an absentee father and wasn't there. So he doesn't feel like, hey, by the way, Dad, you know, the woman that you love, the one who actually treated me well, you know, the only mother I've ever known, they poisoned her. So I murdered them all. I had a reasonable crash out. You abandoning rocks was not a reasonable crash out. This was a reasonable crash out. You beating up a giant bandit to death with your own two hands because you weren't willing to help rocks fight an eldritch god demon thingy. You know, your crash out was not justified. Mine was. They killed my mother, you know. And Loki, of course, doesn't believe in anybody, basically, but Ida. The only person he actually might have, and even then he had the gruff exterior, hey, you old foreign hag, and shit like that. So Loki, of course, didn't say why he did it. Probably, you know, mocked them or, you know, basically was proud of it, you know, boasted about it. They're a bunch of weaklings, and obviously did not tell anybody the truth about it. So he's not even there at Ida's bedside when she dies. Hyrudin and Harald are there, of course, when she dies and stuff like that. And the last moment was very emotional and stuff. He's like, hey, we will, now that like things are going the right direction, you know, we'll go back out to sea. We'll travel very, very soon together again, you know, on the open sea and stuff. She's like, I'd really enjoy that. I'd really like that. And of course, that's when, you know, she's done, and Loki doesn't even get the chance to say goodbye. That's what hurt me. He has to suffer. This reminds me very much MCU Thor 2 The Dark World. Loki behind prison, you know, behind bars in prison, and the only one he gave really much of a shit about at that point, because he wasn't exactly Thor's favorite fan in the MCU, was of course his mother. And his mother dies, and Thor comes to him and sees how he's trashed the room and stuff because he had to suffer alone with his mother's death, the one person he cared about. So we're seeing a very similar parallel to what happened actually in Thor 2. Loki behind bars and has to suffer the loss of his mother all on his own, you know, because he's not willing to talk about his feelings. He's not willing to, you know, be honest with people. He's set up these barriers, these walls, you know, he's got the ego, all that stuff. So this is where we jump now over 14 years ago. So by the sounds of it, Shanks was only in Mary Joa for a better part of a year, if that makes sense. It sounds about a year or two at most, if I've got the timeline correctly. But Shanks literally ditched, and this is probably why his current mission complete, he was going to become a deep sea contract. You know, I'm going to use the teching system from here on out, saying rather than the deep sea or the Marianas Trench Sea or whatever like that. You know, it's bronze, silver, gold. Let's just keep it easy. He was going to become a silver knight. He was going to become one step away from being, you know, the super contract. And obviously, that comes with connotations, as we know from the end of this chapter. Shanks must have known about this, must have found out about this, and in some way, shape, or form, because this is obviously an espionage, Metal Gear Solid sort of thing that Shanks was pulling, because he already had recruited Yasopp prior to us seeing him chilling with Shamrock and Garling. So, if those timelines add up, Shanks had built his crew, likely if Yasopp has joined, likely Ben Beckman, for obvious reasons, and Lucky Roo as well. At the very least, he had already had a small, sizable crew at that point, and then he had decided to go and do this infiltration thing, and the crew's just waiting for his return at this point. He's already built his pirate crew. So he ran back to them after avoiding knowing about the difference between the bronze, silver, and gold levels of the contracts. He went as far as getting the bronze level, knowing that its limitations, but was not willing to jump into the silver one. And I believe the reason being, he knew he was going to be promoted, and he, you know, probably Garling or Shamrock sort of spilled the beans on the details of what that means, or the fact that once you come back from this mission, the Great One, the Emu Sama, is going to grant you the same level that I have, brother, you know, sort of idea. And Shanks knew that meant it was time to dip, right? Because he was well aware. as we see at the end of this chapter what happens to Harald, who currently has the bronze, contract. Now, he goes on to say that, well, we were going to give this to Shanks, but right now we have a big opportunity for you as a result. You've been very good these past, years. We'll grant you that boon. That should have been Shanks. We'll give you, the rank of Silver Knight and stuff. And he's like, oh, absolutely. It means that Elbaf will finally be allowed to join the government. And the Goros are just like, yep, it's been a long haul. You've been changing Elbaf's history, You'll be known as the king who kept going forever. And here's where, once again, another red flag. Harald says, on the day that Elbaf is entered into the world government, I plan to abdicate the throne. Someone younger and pure deserves to be our new king. So, Harald, this is twofold. Harald is not only not a very good king. He's trying to do things with good intentions. He's trying to lead Elbaf away from being a pillaging Captain Kidd Blackbeard type of country, a Hachinosu. But at the same time, he's tripling down on it way too far, right, in my opinion, because many of them are still warriors and they still have warriors' pride. Being nice to humans and establishing trade is one thing, but destroying your entire military might and being like, nope, nobody pick up a sword or shield, he's going way too much extremist the other direction. This is weakening Elbaf. Plus, I think this is the most cowardly bitch move I've seen, because he's like, yeah, so now that I've been your guys' dog forever, I've flipped my entire country's, 1,000-year culture on its head and said, yep, no, everything we've been doing is wrong, and this is the way we're going to lead, and this is what we're going to do. And once we finally join the world government, we're still in the same generation of all the people. Okay. Then it's time for me to retire. And I'll let somebody else deal with the backlash and the shit show of completely upheaving the entire giant culture of centuries and then make it somebody else's problem. That is such a dick move. This is such a dick move. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not about that. I didn't realize this until the other day when I was rereading, and it was something that Pat on the podcast had mentioned, and it was similar to this. But I started thinking about it over the last couple of days, and now I've been rolling with it, and I'm just sitting here like, yeah, no, Harald is... No. Like, that's even worse. Like, he's not even willing to see this dream to fruition. He almost acts like, okay, there's still a lot of progress to make, but I started this chain of events, which is completely, like, it's just, like, he's not even willing to see it through to fruition. He's so narrow-minded and so, I want to get A to B. Now, the end goal is still, Z, but once I get that first part, once I get A, B, C, D, okay, the rest of the alphabet is somebody else's issue. I started this alphabet. Nobody wanted it. Nobody asked for it. But I started it. And I'm not even willing to do halfway. I'm not willing to do, 15, 20 letters worth. No. Half a dozen letters, somebody else's issue to cover up the other 3/4. And it's just... Oh man, Harald just gets worse every single chapter. And so, when he tells the Gorosei, I'm going to abdicate the throne, Mew comes out, sits on the throne, and says, that's for me to decide. And he's like, wait, what? Why is somebody sitting on the empty throne? And Emu's like, come closer. None of his questions are answered. He hears him say, oh, no. That's for me to decide if you're going to stay king or not. That's for me to decide. Harald glazes over that. Somebody's sitting on the empty throne, so the entire history of the world government, a big fat lie, everything he's been told, and he just, oh, okay, boom, he's going to be alchemy marked with the deep sea contract, and it's like, okay, this strength, it's rippling through me, it's quite frightening, it's quite powerful. So once again, proving that you get a power boost, obviously, from this. So Harald is already quite, fierce and powerful on his own right, and now this is giving him even more. So to me, this is like, okay, so, and then he willingly kneeled and accepted the ceremony, whatever it was. Obviously, I don't think somebody came in with a, all right, so we're going to do the little alcohol wipe, and we're going to start. What color would you like? Do you want to do it in all black? Let's stencil it first. No. This is some, jutsu, alchemy friggin' thing that, obviously, because it looks like it, like, smoke cleared, and it's, like, burnt on. So it's almost like a brand more than a tattoo, right? Entirely possible, but given the size of it and stuff like that, I think it's more of a magical brand rather than actually physically they took a hot iron and went and then like, okay, that's like a freckle on you. Okay, we need to make a big one. We need a big one. So the Gorosei continued to say, like, now you are immortal. It completely chills the spine. He is more a monster. He's now just a weapon. And they're all saying this. Harald can hear them. He is just, his ears, this is the deafest character I've ever seen. Okay? And then he basically, Imu goes on to say that now you're an undying knight in my service, and he's like, so I'm immortal? That's kind of crazy. He's like, now you will go and you'll draw the pentagram, you'll draw, the lovely pagan symbols and all that shit. You will create an abyss on Elbaf. That is your first assignment. And with that, the final duty after that will be completed and stuff like that. So Harald is just, he's not listening at all. He's not any of the red flags, anything else. 99% of this conversation and dialogue has been giant crimson-colored blood red flags. And he's just sitting there like, oh, you'll finally let me be a part of your tyranny organization? Yay! Like, seriously, this dude, did he drop... Like, when Ida slapped him, did he stop developing? Like, did he seriously, like, he's got no development? Is he still, like, he's stuck like a 9-year-old with a shiny toy? I swear, you could do the carrot with the stick tied to the dog. You could do this with Harald. Because that is exactly what has happened. I'm just that much closer to the cat. You know what I mean? You could literally do the fishing pole thing with Harald, and it would work. This dude is a child in a man's body. Like, so naive, my God. And we move on. He's painted the symbol and stuff, and he's like, okay, it's all good. He gets back to the castle, and immediately, Imu doesn't even need to hide his intentions. He told Rox what his intentions were and goes, your buddy Harald there. He goes, I've never been able to take over the Giants. The Giants sort of freak me out. They are powerful. They're the mightiest, clan, and I have no control over them. And I'm never going to get control. I lost that dream 900 years ago. I've been waiting decades and centuries for you guys to have such an idiot king. And now I got one. I'm going to use it. So he doesn't even pretend. He's like, all right, so not only, you've painted that symbol. Fantastic. Now here's what you're going to do. You're going to rally every goddamn giant and create the ultimate army for me. Military might. Let's go. And Harold's like, wait. I've been doing all these things to escape the fighting, Like, me doing the fighting, that was one thing, when I said I would be a slave, which once again, Harald. But, no, I did this to let our country escape. And it's like, you're still under their thumb. It's like, yeah, you serve him. So, you literally said, oh, I'm no longer king. I have a super king. You know what I mean? Like, you gave up your country. Because you are not a king saying, like, I'm making handshake deals as equals. You're like, I will serve you who sits on the empty throne, which I did not question. I noticed it, I questioned it, got no answers, and just said, I'm sure that's fine. And then you allowed yourself to become now a servitude. You're no longer a king. You can't be a king and serve another king. That's not how it works. You cannot be that. You can have alliances, you can have sovereignty, you can have agreements and stuff, but the fact of the matter is, you cannot be a true world leader, a true king, while serving another. Like, it doesn't work that way. It just does not. You can be a lord, you can be a duke, you can be a daimyo, but you cannot be a king and not be the top dog. So what were you thinking? And he's like, no, I don't want to do this. And then Emu basically said, the history you wanted to atone for? You think it was just you? No. All of Elbaf must do my bidding now, yeah. And he's just like, yep, no, you do not speak back because you cannot disobey me any longer. You accepted the covenant of immortality and strength, and now you must obey all my orders in return. I will do this my way. And this is where Harald is sort of swept up. He's dragged towards the circle in the middle of the throne room and says, I can't stop. I'm being controlled. You know, there was never any intent to bring us into the circle of the world. Damn you all! And it's like, Harald, you have zero right to finally have this clairvoyance. Because everyone around you for decades, plural, has been telling you the world government is shit. You have, not only have you been told by all the people that you have no reason to distrust about all the bullshit they pull, you've seen it with your own eyes, and you have acted as one of them. You have participated, witnessed, on multiple occasions, and heard from everyone you trust that this probably ain't the best idea. This is an unearned... Wait, you mean everything I worked for was a lie? What? He does not deserve this. So now, of course, the end of the chapter, Harald still seems to have some level of control, and he's just like, quick, chain me to the pillars. You know, guards, quickly, get my sons, get Elder Jarl, get everybody in here. You need to release Loki now. You need to bring everybody here. So this is why Loki and Jarl were going to the throne room, obviously, because Loki was still in prison. And then he's like, oh, no, we need them here. Somebody's got to stop me. And he's like, Elder Jarl, Hyrudin, Loki, I need the people who can actually physically stop me. And he's like, I need my sons. They're the only, I need the most powerful warriors. Dorian Broggy aren't here, so he's just taking names. He's like, okay, people who have my blood, they definitely, might stand a chance. And then, Elder Jarl, the strong, the oldest giant. So he's just trying to get everybody here, and he's trying to keep himself. He can't resist. He's trying, but he's failing. Similar to the Domi Reversi of Rocks. He's trying, but he's failing fast. So everyone gets called, and we finally return. The narrator comes on and said, on this day, the terrible massacre inside the castle, and the most beloved ruler in the history of Elbaf, wise King Harald, perished. So we know that obviously Loki is probably going to be the one now to end his father's life. And everybody's going to be blamed. Jarl, obviously the sword is not in Jarl's Viking helmet yet, so Elder Jarl probably doesn't remember this. Everyone has already concluded that this is definitely where the amnesia came. As far as, Elder Jarl, that's been foreshadowed, that's been just so obvious this whole time. So Loki has now probably been forced to kill his father at his father's request, sort of idea. One of those, but calling him the most beloved ruler. Sure, maybe the most beloved, but wise King Harald. Wise King Harald is the biggest pile of bullshit. Even using another Jurassic Park reference, when Jeff Goldblum came across the Triceratops's mountain and said, that is one big pile of shit, that is a speck on the amount of bullshit, the mountain of bull that wise King Harald, he was never wise. Hasn't been a king ever since he said, I'm going to become a slave. And the only thing accurate about this is that his name is Harald and he perished. That's the only accurate part of that bloody sentence, is all I'm going to say. So, anyway, that's the end of the chapter. It was a big chapter, obviously. I'm just happy we're finally away from Harald, because everything Harald did went from bad to worse. He just kept making the worst possible decision every single step of the way, and not just once or twice. And this is why I said, and we discussed it on the podcast, as I said, plug, definitely go check it out. It was a great time. We discussed this, that Odin made one naive mistake, a major one, a huge one, that cost him in the end Wano and his life. But he made a judgment call, one-time judgment call, and he was wrong, and he made a mistake. Not saying he didn't. But Harald consistently made mistakes almost as big, if not bigger, then that one, because obviously we see what happened, and it all led up to this. And unlike him, Odin didn't have anybody there telling him. He didn't have a rocks in his ear for 20 years saying, no, this is how shit goes down. Kaido? No. Kaido doesn't have the force to stop you, man, blah, blah, blah. Nobody was there to tell him that. Nobody was there to advise Odin. Odin took that burden on himself and shut everything down to try to do what was absolutely best for his people. Harald, I'm not saying he didn't try to do what was best for his people, but he also was trying to completely change a culture. And as stated many times, Ida died without ever getting married to Harald. The thing is, Harald was, and this is how democracies work, obviously. Dictatorships don't work this way. But kings, generally, we wanted him to do a Henry VIII, right? If we look at King Harald as Henry VIII, and we look at the elders and the Council of Elbaf as the Catholic Church, that's what we wanted to go down. Catholic Church tells King Henry VIII, no, you can't get divorced and can't marry somebody else. Henry VIII said, I'm the king? Who the fuck are you to tell me? So, fuck your church. I'll make my own church, which allows divorce. Problem solved. And he did. And problem solved. So my problem with Harald is, not only did he not have the balls to do that, but he somehow had the balls to take away, even Ida said, there's nothing wrong with a warrior's honor and pride, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to take everything away. Like, get rid of maybe the warmongering and the pillaging, but you don't need to stop letting warriors be warriors, There's nothing wrong with that. So, once again, he doubled and tripled down way too far in one direction, so it changed Elbaf for the better, but also too far in that direction, as we're seeing right now in the present storyline. He changed it too much, but wasn't willing to change other aspects of the culture that would have made him a better character overall. So he is, once again, very well-written character. I think Oda is intending us to dislike Harald and all his decisions. I don't think Oda's sitting there, Harald is one of the greatest, wisest kings, and we're going to see his downfall and how he was played and how he's a tragic character. No. I don't think Oda did that. Oda intentionally has shown us that Harald is a well-written character, but he's naive to the utmost degree. He's just a tunnel vision. I want it now, and he's trying to overcompensate for, everything, for all of Elbaf. He's trying to fix 900 to 1,000 years of Elbaf history, and he's trying to fix it in 5 minutes, and it just does not work that way, right? And I've talked about this, on multiple reviews. We talked about this on the podcast and stuff, and it's the exact same thing, There was multiple examples. Definitely go check out the podcast. I think the first hours where we discuss all this, more of the latest chapter stuff, and we had a lot of great points from, everyone in the podcast and stuff like that, and we doubled down. So I'll just end my point here. Obviously, I think Harald is well written, but we're meant to disagree with him fundamentally, at every junction, right? But yeah, for more in-depth on all the thoughts and feelings towards that, check out the podcast, and that'll be the review, chapter 1168, Elbaf Snow. It was a good chapter. I'm glad we're finally caught up with the flashback within the flashback, finally to the part that Loki can finally tell. So 1169, looking forward to it. Hope you guys are too. Like, comment, subscribe, and as always, have a good one. Sayonara, everybody.